Hello, hello. Observe, my dining table is once again clear, which I am thrilled about. Finley has just deposited a potato in my lap, so we're all set. This would have been ever so slightly easier to talk about if the order had been switched with the topic from yesterday, but such is life. So there are a lot of things I could say about Christianity. I was a Christian in high school, as with like a large majority probably of other people in my like demographic. I was raised not Christian specifically, but like in a vaguely Christian environment where like there would be phases of my life where I would go to church with my mom and other phases where we wouldn't do anything religious at all, but I had best friends whose families would always go to church, stuff like that. So I didn't have a personal relationship with the religion until I was like probably like 15, so like early high school, after I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis and was really struggling with my health and also just, I don't know, trying to like figure things out. And I was stressed all the time, and I think I naturally have a very religious personality, so all of the elements of my personality that were sort of like turned up in response to stress definitely increased my like very religious leaning tendencies. And the best friend I had at the time invited me to go to church, and the rest is history. I just kind of like, I don't know, I latched onto this thing as like, well, all of these people are telling me that this is how it is, that this is true, that this is reality. And I said this in another video, but like, I didn't have, when I was younger, a good explanatory framework for how and why people can say things that are untrue with such conviction. So I was really apt to just, I don't know, like I was smart enough to understand that like not everybody is Christian, so therefore like for every person that will confidently say X, Y, and Z is true, you can find another person who will confidently say a mutually exclusive thing like X, Y, and Z is untrue, or this other mutually exclusive thing is true, or whatever. So like I was aware of that, and it gave me endless amounts of cognitive dissonance. But I think the fact that my closest friends were the people who were saying this thing is true, that was the predominant influence on me. And I was like, okay, well, like, like all these people, like, I don't know. It just, I was really apt to believe people. But I'm also a natural, I don't know if I'm a natural skeptic, but I do need reasons. I do need like logical reasons and rationales for what I believe. And if I observe a contradiction, I need that to be explained. Otherwise, I will remain skeptical. I'm very intellectually stubborn in that way. So long story short, I spent like all 4 years of high school reading apologetics book after apologetics book, trying to like pretzel my brain into not having doubts about the sort of like fundamental tenets of Christianity. And I ultimately was not successful. I don't know what would have happened had I stayed fully enmeshed in my friend group at the time, rather than like this natural separation that happens when everybody goes to college. Maybe I would have continued brain pretzeling indefinitely, but it was a really interesting experience because this feeling of doubt and lack of faith was something that I was conscious of and struggling with almost 100% of the time. And it seemed like nobody else in my like small group or youth group were having the same struggle. Like there was one very notable instance where my youth group hosted this like, I don't know, like a seminar kind of thing where every student, maybe not every student, I don't know if it was assigned or volunteered or whatever, like you could volunteer to do a presentation for the other like youth group members. And I volunteered to do a presentation, or I don't know if I volunteered. I did a presentation on, it was called something like, Does God Exist? Or something like that, like basically dealing with doubt and disbelief and things like that. And nobody came to my presentation, which like was fine. The small group leaders came and sat and cheered for me and whatever. It was fine. But it was just so striking that this issue that was my absolute biggest struggle was like not even on the radar for anybody else. It's like everybody else's presentations were like how to deal with sex when you're a Christian, or like, I don't know, other like topics of how to live given that you are a Christian and want to be a good Christian or whatever. So yeah, that kind of sums up my experience with Christianity. The other factor that definitely accelerated my religious decline is I took a class in college that was an introduction to the Old Testament. So we learned about like the four different, I don't know if they call them editors, just like the different strains of that was poor Finny choking on something down here. He's fine, just noisy. Yeah, like the four different strains of like writer, I guess, essentially, that contributed to the modern version of the Old Testament, and like how they originated in different times and in different places. And if you like pull them apart, they sort of present God in slightly different ways and have slightly different themes. So very much a brutally historical analysis of the Old Testament as a historical text. And you know, it was all over for me after that. And so that's basically my personal experience with Christianity. I have other kind of unrelated things to say about Christianity, one of which is that when I was reading my philosophy textbook, which I mentioned in the video yesterday, there was such a dramatic shift that I perceived, at least, in, I don't know, like vibe, when the text shifted from discussing like sort of classical Greek philosophy to the more like Middle Ages Christian philosophers and theologians, because all of the, like, especially around obviously morality, like there was just, it felt like a very stark divide to me, where prior to the Christian influence, there was this kind of focus on, I don't know, like strength and virtue and character and how to be a good, noble person or whatever. And then post-Christian influence, it's like, I don't know, there was, and I'm probably now like merging this in my head with like Nietzsche's thoughts on Christianity, and probably not doing justice to the actual like vibe shift that I noticed at the time, because that was pre me being exposed to Nietzsche. But it felt like it just got kind of darker. Like there was this quality of guilt. That's that's what I'm looking for. Like a lot of the, all of a sudden there's like this strong influence of guilt and sinfulness, where that did not seem present prior to that. And I do want to like insert a disclaimer that there are so many different ways to be Christian, and you know, there's no, like, I'm not trying to make a statement about like every Christian is motivated by guilt and that's awful for psychological health. Like that's not the claim I'm trying to make here. Like some of the most joyful, loving people that I've ever known have been Christian, and I mean, who knows, maybe they're like really psychologically unhealthy on the inside. I have no way of knowing that, but yeah, as I mentioned in my video about positive reinforcement training for dogs, a given ideology or a given like framework or set of beliefs, no matter how